Money Radio, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to welcome Laura Bramnick from TalkRealEstateAZ.com. Laura is an attorney, a consumer advocate, and a real estate agent. Nice combination. And her website is TalkRealEstateAZ.com, 480-624-2705. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sinclair.
Laura, that combination, we've talked about this before. It may be possible to have you working as a real estate agent and also representing someone as their attorney in a transaction.
That's correct.
And you do residential and commercial.
Yes, I do.
And if folks would like to find out more, TalkRealEstateAZ.com is the website, or they can call you. You answer your phone.
Yes, I do.
480-624-2705, 480-624-2705. And I'd also like to say folks can come and meet you at Financial Fest, Saturday, November 15th.
Yeah, I'll be at the All-Star panel, which is going to be at 3 o'clock.
Right.
And I'll definitely be there a little bit before and a little bit after if anybody wants to even just come up and say hello.
We're looking forward to it. You always add so much to the All-Star panel.
Thank you,
And
Sinclair.
I'm glad you can join us again this year, 3 o'clock at Financial Fest, Weston Kierland, Saturday, November 15th. Now, let's talk today about some important issues when it comes to working out a contract, and that's
Yes.
contingencies.
Yeah, you know, most of the time I get a contract after there's trouble. And
Right.
so I kind of have a bird's eye view of some of the things that I can suggest to avoid the trouble from the start. You know, because I see what happens when contracts fall apart. And real estate contracts specifically, you know, need to be in writing. And people don't realize that even if they have something happen to them that was unanticipated and is harsh, like a death or a job loss,
Right.
that just because something bad has happened doesn't mean they can cancel the contract.
But there are surprises, there are circumstances that can come up that can lead to a cancellation.
Absolutely. And you need to think about your own personal situation and know that even if something harsh it may happen, some people know in their, you know, like if there have been a lot of layoffs in your company, or if your spouse is ill, so that there's certain things you can, in your own particular circumstance, try to anticipate and put as a contingency because you're more aware of it as opposed to just a freak thing that may happen.
Now, there are some standard contingencies, are there not?
Yes, there are standard contingencies. The most common ones are inspections and financing and the HOA. So if you're getting financing, the contract says that if you don't get approved, you can cancel and get your money back.
Also, the house would have to appraise out
Yes.
for you to get the financing.
Exactly. So there's several reasons why you know, you may not get your loan. Now, the financing contingencies have been tightened up in recent years. In other words, you can't change your loan program. If changing it, and if it's harder to qualify, and then you could qualify for the initial program, you actually have to indicate what loan program you're applying for, and you get a pre-qual. And if you change your program and then you don't qualify as a result, you still can be bound. That financing contingency falls away.
Okay.
Now, also with financing, the financing is, the mortgage company or the mortgage broker is not a party to the contract. And yet, they can be in some ways involved to the point, there are some people, sellers, that want to remove the financing contingency. Some of them want to remove it altogether, and some of them want to remove it early, so that the money goes hard maybe long before the close of escrow.
Okay.
That some mortgage people get very nervous about that because they know their clients can lose their earnest money if they can't qualify them. And as you know, the mortgage market has tightened up, and it's really the underwriting and if you're a broker, who you're selling your loans to, which company. So you're kind of left hanging out there in some ways. But, you know, these are some of the things that happen in the negotiation process. And as you know, it's a business transaction.
Sure.
So you have to think about, am I willing to take the risk, and what is the risk in this situation?
What you're also telling me is that even though there is a standard list of contingencies, you can alter that list, add to or subtract from that list.
And that's the very, very important part of this conversation, is that you need to determine what's most important to you as the seller. And you may want a shorter close of escrow. You may want to move sooner. You may be buying another home and need the money to buy that other home, and you may have a contract on that other home. You may have an elderly parent who's very ill, and you need to move to take care of them, you know. So, and then there's things that come up that you don't anticipate, meaning maybe a marital separation, or a job loss, or an illness.
And then you also mentioned inspections. That can get to be real interesting because you never know what you're going to find behind a wall or with wiring or...
Yeah, the contract calls for, standard contract calls for 10-day inspection period. If I were a buyer, that would not be long enough for me because, you know, I got to line up my inspectors. I don't know what their schedule is. If the inspector finds something, I may want to get an additional inspection. So, you know, if I were a buyer, I would want more than 10 days.
And you can write that in.
Yes. If I'm a seller, I don't want to increase the inspection period because, you know, it doesn't benefit me. And I'm required to disclose what I know about the home anyway.
There are some other areas that I think are also important for us to touch on. You mentioned HOAs, and there's a lot that can come into play when there's a homeowners association, their bylaws, their CC&Rs that can come into play.
Now, the good news is you have to be given a copy within so many days after you sign the contract. So you have time to review them, but a lot of times they're voluminous.
Sure.
And there's a lot of information that's kind of unnecessary to you, and it can be hard to read through them. But what happens is if you don't read through them thoroughly, and then you get fined after you've closed. It may be a month later, it may be 6 months later, it may be a year later. And what people don't realize is that the HOAs have the power to foreclose.
So there are a lot of things we need to be aware of. We've talked mainly about the buyer contingencies. There are also seller contingencies. Maybe next week we'll touch on those as well.
Good.
But the important thing here is to remember that there can be surprises while you're in the contract period. You need to think about those possible surprises that might come your way. You need to make sure that you are protected so that any money you put down doesn't get lost if you need to cancel out that contract.
Right.
That's what contingencies are all about. And they are unique, and the standard boilerplate may not match your own individual circumstances. That's why you need Laura Bramnick on your side.
Yes.
Laura Bramnick from TalkRealEstateAZ.com. 480-624-2705. 480-624-2705. And as you say, it's always better if you can get involved early and prevent a problem rather than coming back and cleaning up a problem.
That's correct.
Laura, thank you so much for joining us. And again, looking forward to seeing you out at Financial Fest, Saturday, November 15th, 3 p.m., part of the All-Star panel. Thank you.
I'm very excited.